Okay, let's dive in. If you're a parent, or honestly, even if you're not, you've probably thought about this. What makes a truly good education?
Mm, mm.
It feels like such a personal struggle, right? Trying to navigate the options, seeing the limitations of the systems we have.
Yeah, and wondering how we set kids up for a good life. It's huge.
Exactly. And that personal question, you might be surprised, is actually where the material for this deep dive kicks off.
It really frames that individual dilemma. The conscientious parent looking around and just finding things lacking as the spark.
Spark for what? Bigger questions?
Yeah, the spark that kind of inevitably ignites these much larger questions about society, politics, even philosophy. It shows how raising a child, educating them, isn't just private. It's deeply connected to everything else.
So this source material, it's not your typical how-to guide for schools then.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's really thoughtful, quite deep. Maybe written a little while ago, but honestly, the insights feel incredibly relevant today.
It takes a big picture view, you mean?
Totally holistic.
Yeah.
From like day one of infancy right through university. And it challenges you to think not just about what we teach, but fundamentally why. What's the point of it all?
Okay, so our mission here is to unpack that, pull out the core arguments.
Right. We'll look at what it says are the main aims of education, explore some maybe surprising ideas about how character gets formed
From day one, you said.
from day one, and the role of knowledge, and ultimately try to sketch out what a genuinely good educational system might look like according to this perspective.
All right, let's start right there with that parent's dilemma. The source highlights this tension. Kids at home might lack companionship, feel a bit odd,
Yeah, isolated maybe. But then parents look at the schools.
and they see grave defects, as the source puts it, big problems.
Exactly. And, for well-off parents, maybe finding one good school works for their kids. But the source is really clear.
For most people.
For the vast majority, especially wage earners, the problems are systemic, particularly in elementary schools. You can't just fix it with one school here or there. It needs fundamental reform.
Which sounds hard.
Oh, yeah. It calls it a long, difficult path. And it says it needs energetic educational propaganda. Basically, getting everyone on board with a different vision.
Okay, so that leads us right into the core question. What are the aims of education then? Beyond just job skills, what kind of people, what kind of society are we trying to build?
And the source is very specific here. It says it's not talking about eugenics or anything like that.
Okay, good.
Instead, it puts huge weight on modern psychology discoveries, showing that character is profoundly shaped by early education, like really early.
So there's a key distinction it makes.
Yeah, between education of character and education in knowledge
Yeah.
or instruction. They're linked, obviously, especially later on. But character comes first, foundationally.
And education should set you up for life after school, too.
Right. Make you capable of learning from experience, adapting,
Yeah.
not just filling you up with facts for exams.
Okay, so this view immediately starts challenging some common ideas, doesn't it? Like methods used for rich kids.
Relying on lots of nurses, servants.
Yeah.
It critiques that, not just because it's not universal, obviously.
But also because...
It suggests it might make children unnecessarily parasitic. That's pretty blunt.
Wow, yeah. And it dives into that whole useful versus ornamental education debate.
Big time. It connects that idea of ornamental learning classics just for status, the old gentlewoman ideal, back to Veblen.
Forstein Veblen, Theory of the Leisure Class.
Exactly. Linking it to aristocracy, class structures.
But it doesn't just say usefulness is bad, right?
No, not at all. It questions the narrow definition, like useful just meaning you can build machines or satisfy basic needs.
It argues true usefulness needs more.
It has to be tied to something with intrinsic value. Education, fundamentally, is a means to a good life. It's not the end goal itself.
So the real debate isn't if it should be useful, but how useful? What kind of useful?
Precisely. Should it be purely practical skills? Or should it give students mental possessions, which are good on their own account?
Like knowing inches in a foot versus
Yeah.
appreciating Hamlet.
That's the example, yeah. And the source argues a democratic education wants both of those things for everyone, not just one or the other, or one for some people and one for others.
And it frames this as material goods versus mental delights.
Sort of. It makes this really interesting point that modern industry and science, physics, physiology, psychology have actually made a world possible where widespread happiness, reduction of physical suffering is achievable.
Okay.
For that specific goal, maybe you don't strictly need Latin, Greek, Dante, Shakespeare, Bach, Mozart.
But they still have value, intrinsic value.
Absolutely. It strongly defends that. Math and science aren't just tools. They're beautiful objects for contemplation, touchstones of truth.
And it even argues for modern languages over classics sometimes.
Yeah, like French or German for non-specialists. Because they offer utility and access to great literature, but potentially demand less time on complex grammar than Latin or Greek. More bang for your buck, educationally speaking.
It uses a really specific example about spelling.
Oh yeah, the spelling thing. It notes people used to learn like 10, 15,000 word spellings.
Well, we don't actually need that many.
Studies show fluent writers maybe need 3,000. Average folks, even fewer. So spending tons of time drilling spelling.
Which is just arbitrary convention, really.
Right. It sacrifices learning a large vocabulary, which you do need to express yourself well and understand complex ideas. Knowing how to use words learned from reading good stuff is way more important than just spelling lists.
Okay, that sets up the why reform and the broad aims. Let's dig into this education of character, starting at birth, based on psychology.
Right. And it explicitly challenges the old idea that infants were just outside of education's scope, left to instinct. It says flat out, people did not know how important this stage was.
So what's the approach in year one? Not just leaving them to instinct.
No, it's about a balance between neglect and indulgence. Attend to physical needs, obviously wind, warmth, being dry.
But if they're just crying for attention?
It suggests letting them cry sometimes after checking needs are met. Avoid creating a tyrant who expects constant fuss. Treat the infant like a potential adult, not just a cute pet. Don't puff up their self-importance.
The sleep example makes that really clear. Letting them learn to self-soothe.
Exactly. Prevents problems later driven by just demanding attention. And that nightlight anecdote is telling you, gave it for fear, then had to take it away when the crying became about getting the light. Kids learn manipulation fast if you let them.
It's about predictability then, routine.
Hugely important.
Yeah.
The world is just sensations for a newborn. Regularity helps them start recognizing objects, patterns. It gives security, avoids overstrain.
And kids learn by doing, right? The rattle example.
Yeah, adult provides stimulus, kid has to figure it out. Effort is key. And that wish for safety, routine, might tap into something deep, maybe even our belief in natural laws.
And part of this is managing fear, hiding your own anxiety.
Definitely hide your anxiety if they're sick. And crucially, don't let necessary things like eating or sleeping become like favors the child does for you.
Because that gives them power?
Instant power. They learn to manipulate the situation. Keep it matter of fact.
Okay, let's talk more about fear itself, instinctive or learned.
The source leans heavily towards learned. Many common fears animals early on, the dark it argues, are probably picked up from adult reactions or suggestions.
But it mentions that fear of the mysterious.
Yeah, William Stern's idea. Maybe an instinctive flinch from sudden weird stuff, umbrella opening, mechanical toy moving. Could be biological, a survival thing.
And it gives examples of overcoming fear, the shadows.
Right. Making shadows with fingers, encouraging imitation, making the scary thing familiar, controllable. Simple, but effective.
And the sea anecdote is quite something. Somewhat drastic methods.
Yeah. Daily plunging, using shame or pride temporarily, until familiarity just takes over. It notes it was easier for the sister, so methods might need adjusting. But early physical confidence, self-control are seen as vital.
So courage isn't just about willpower.
Not just gritting your teeth. Behaviorally, it's doing stuff others are too scared to do. Modern education, it suggests, should try to make the brave act the path of least resistance. Build positive impulses, don't just suppress fear.
And it values certain kinds of courage more, like manipulating matter over just physical contest.
Yeah, mountaineering, flying, sailing, may be seen as more constructive than just football, for instance. Developing skill against challenges in the world.
Sensitiveness is the counterpoint.
Exactly. Apprehending dangers, feeling for others, sympathy, feeling with others, often needs something concrete, though.
The Shanghai cotton mill shareholder.
Powerful example. Causes harm through investment, but feels nothing. Because the suffering children are abstract, unseen. So education needs to foster sensitivity to abstract stimuli in our big, complex world. Cognitive sensitivity observation is part of intelligence.
Death, tricky subject. How to handle it.
Don't bring it up, but answer honestly if asked. No solemnity. Keep it factual. Emphasize it's usually far off. Goal is preventing morbid brooding, not early stoicism.
Shyness.
Kind of timidity. Often from being too self-focused, lacking interesting things to do. Cure is wide interest, engagement.
And ignorance fuels fear. Truthfulness comes from fearlessness.
That's a core link it draws. An unafraid child will tend to be truthful.
Okay, so truth and fearlessness. Let's move to specifics like selfishness and justice. Selfishness isn't seen as inherently evil.
More like a practical problem to be managed. Preaching doesn't work. Environment and social interactions are key. And teaching universal self-sacrifice is actually discouraged breeds resentment.
But justice is different.
Justice can be universal and should be taught. Parents must be strictly just themselves, distributing treats, attention fairly.
The Fairchild family anecdote, punishing Lucy for her thoughts.
Terrible example, right? Just pushes bad feelings underground. Let kids express feelings, explain things fairly. That's the advice.
What about property? Kids having their own stuff.
Yeah, important to have cherished possessions, but also use shared things like Montessori tools to learn limited tenant right. You use it while you're working on it. Respect others' work.
And dealing with unkindness.
Prevent destroying others' work.
Right.
Mild punishment or sternness if one child is being a tyrant. Maybe even show the older child how their unkindness feels to the younger one and explain why it's wrong.
Untruthfulness, back to fear again.
Almost always a product of fear, the source argues. A fearless child doesn't need to lie.
And young kids confusing fantasy and reality isn't lying.
Not in the same way. It's not intent to deceive, usually. Also, avoid adult humbug, calling the table naughty. And don't pretend to be perfect. Kids see right through adult hypocrisies anyway.
Punishment. This is a big one. The source looks at the history.
Yeah, Dr. Arnold's flogging, those old cautionary tales.
Well,
a shift away from seeing kids as limbs of Satan.
those old methods didn't work.
Flogging, sermons, don't create virtue. The source even suggests some old educators seem to enjoy the cruelty.
But the key alternative idea is...
Happiness in childhood.
Huh.
Absolutely necessary for the best kind of person. Idleness isn't some moral flaw to beat out. It disappears if learning feels worthwhile. Cruel teachers create distorted, fearful people. The Chekhov's kitten analogy.
And just suppressing bad desires with willpower is flawed.
Yeah, they just pop up elsewhere, often worse, like the man beating his son because he secretly wanted to kill his own father. Cruelty-justifying theories often come from suppressed stuff like that. Psychoanalysis gets a nod here for highlighting how crucial infancy is. Even if fixing character by age 3 is maybe an exaggeration, it focuses attention correctly.
So if not flogging, what kind of discipline?
When reason fails, mild punishment. Specifically, temporary isolation. Taking the child to another room, door open, they can come back when ready. The source says this worked.
Like Montessori's chair idea.
Similar principle. Isolating disruptive kids to observe others working peacefully. The source says it worked for Montessori because she dealt with health issues first, applied it skillfully, and crucially, the other activities were actually interesting to watch.
So the principles are, punishment should be disliked, but relevant. Praise and blame used carefully. No comparisons.
Right. Blame sparingly. Praise effort, new skills, kindness. But the main drive should be interest in the activity itself, not just seeking praise or avoiding blame.
What about serious things like cruelty?
Needs more than just punishment. Requires specific, targeted education ad hoc. Watch for early signs. Teach respect for life. Don't torture the kid for torturing animals. Teach them not to want to. Change the desire.
Okay. Affection and sympathy can't be forced.
Absolutely not. Parents have to earn it by their behavior. Being relaxed, showing joy, being reliable helpers. Kids look to parents for fun, adventure, help, not just room and board.
And healthy parental love isn't needy.
Right. It's satisfied by the child's growth and dependence, like animal instinct. Needing too much emotional response back, that Oedipus complex stuff, can stifle independence.
Being tied to mother's apron strings?
Exactly. And the source notes this was an issue for girls too. Traditionally, maybe less recognized because helplessness was kind of expected or desired in women then.
How do you cultivate wider sympathy beyond the family?
By directing attention, showing them facts that militarists and authoritarians suppress, make the suffering of others real.
Like the Tolstoy example, Austerlitz.
Perfect example. Focusing on the concrete horror of the battlefields, not just abstract victory. That stirs sympathy. We need sensitivity to abstract suffering in our big world. Remember the shareholder.
Right. How do you introduce the idea of evil then? Carefully.
Very carefully. Don't traumatize young kids with scary sights. Use stories where they identify with the victim, remote but vivid ones. Later, introduce real-world evil gradually.
And frame it as solvable.
Yes, stemming from ignorance, lack of control, bad education, not innate wickedness. See wrongdoers as bunglers, people who messed up, rather than monsters to hate. avoid indignation.
And the end results of all this good character education.
Happy, free, kindly raised children become spontaneously friendly and trusting. And that positive outlook tends to create the positive responses it expects from the world. It's self-fulfilling.
That's a really hopeful view. Okay, moving to sex education. The source tackles infantile masturbation head-on.
Yep, common in years 2 and 3. Historically met with horror, dreadful threats causing agony, nervousness, insane terrors, the source is adamant. Left alone, it has no bad effect. Zero.
So definitely no prohibition.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Maybe ensure sleepiness, provide distractions, but never forbid it or draw attention to it. That's what causes the harm.
Curiosity starts around age 3.
Naturally, as part of general curiosity. Adults make it weird and secret.
So the answer is openness, frankness.
Yes. Let kids see nudity naturally at home. No fuss. Curiosity fades when satisfied. Answer questions truthfully, normally, like any other topic.
It's the adult hush-hush that creates the problem.
Exactly. That creates the prurience, the unhealthy focus.
Learning about reproduction before puberty is called absolutely vital. Why so strongly?
Because if they learn it first from peers, it's often treated as comic and nasty, distorted from the start. The source shares a personal story about learning it that way at 12 and finding it hard to respect women later.
So treat sex as natural, delightful, and decent from the start.
That's the core argument. Crucial for healthy relationships between partners, between parents and children. Best when based on love, spontaneity, without fear.
And knowing the actual mechanics before puberty is essential.
For boys and girls.
Uh,
Prevents fears bodily changes. Allows a scientific spirit, which is harder later. Tell them if they ask, however young. If they don't ask, tell them before 10, before peers do.
And girls, boys too, need physiology, hygiene. Understanding parenting needs knowledge.
Yes, knowledge plus affection. And the source challenges conventional morality here. Says a positive, hope-based morality is different from restrictive codes causing misery and hypocrisy. Don't teach rules you think are harmful.
The key is a scientific attitude, not dogma.
Exactly. Avoid teaching unproven beliefs as absolute facts, like strict monogamy being the only way.
Decency comes from normality.
From treating it like any other subject. Truthfulness. Avoiding dogma. Not from making it special or taboo.
Okay, that leads us to institutions. Nursery schools, the source, is a big fan.
Huge advocate. Ideally for all children. Early childhood is so vital, medically and psychologically. Compares rural kids, maybe loved but languishing from parental ignorance, to slum kids thriving in good nursery schools.
The Macmillan evidence is cited.
Yeah, showing nursery kids in slums could have better physique and intelligence than some middle-class kids. Proving love without knowledge isn't enough. It takes highly skilled work.
And this would improve the whole system.
Dramatically. Kids would progress faster later, raising the whole cultural level. Nursery schools show disease and misery can be beaten, exposing how bad traditional schools often are: grim buildings, no sun.
There's an interesting point about progress coming from studying kids with difficulties.
Right, like Sigwin's work. Because you couldn't just blame them for being bad. You had to figure out techniques to help them learn. Those techniques then helped everyone.
But a warning comes with this power, the danger of dogma.
Yes, a strong warning. Education is dangerous if used for propaganda, religious, patriotic, communist, whatever, instead of being driven by love for the child and aiming to create love in the child. Good techniques just make bad aims more efficient.
So after age 6, the focus shifts.
The idea is character is largely set by 6, if done right, good habits, positive desires. So instruction can then focus mainly on intellectual growth. Further character virtues will hopefully follow from that.
And teaching shouldn't be about moralizing.
No. Teach knowledge for its own sake, to satisfy curiosity. Never discourage curiosity. Don't try to use lessons to prove moral or political points.
What qualities are needed for intellectual life?
Curiosity fundamental. Open-mindedness harder later on. Belief that knowledge is possible. Patience, industry, concentration, exactness. Curiosity needs to be broad, not just self-interest or gossip.
Concentration gets special attention again. Voluntary focus.
Yes, focusing intensely for a long time, by choice, even on boring stuff if needed. Essential for difficult work, complex understanding. Old-fashioned schools might have been better at this, the source muses. Modern methods maybe need to watch out here.
Accuracy important but tedious.
You got to make its importance clear. Like in games, arithmetic is key here early on. It's just right or wrong. Forces attention to correctness.
Learning should be interesting, but there are limits.
Yeah, modern view is it can be delightful. The source agrees, mostly. But don't push so hard the kid feels they're doing you a favor. Montessori principles again. Attractive tasks, seeing older kids engaged, no better alternative. Most kids learned eagerly that way.
What about the dull bits you just have to learn?
Use praise blame for specific tasks. Show why it matters for the bigger skill. If a child really struggles despite good methods, maybe they need a different approach. Teach them separately. Don't just label them lazy or bad.
Are parents good teachers for their own kids?
Generally, no. Too emotionally involved, too many existing habits and expectations, like doctors treating family. Informal teaching is great, but not the main classroom role.
Okay, curriculum before 14. More is possible with better methods.
Definitely. Early years, pre-7, sense perception, drawing, music, dance, group concentration. Arithmetic needs careful steps, but master the rules.
Geography and history need improvement.
Often badly taught, yeah. Make geography vivid, travel stories, pictures, film. History after 6. World history outline, Wells Van Loon style. Simplified. Crucially, no nationalism. Focus on humanity's shared struggles and progress. Treat divisions as follies.
Literature, learning by heart.
Familiarity with good literature shapes thought and style. Learning by heart isn't just memory. It builds appreciation for language's beauty, makes it part of you. Learn modern languages early for fluency French-German, better than Latin-Greek for most, due to utility plus literature.
Math, science, classics, explore between 12-14.
Yeah, enough to see if there's aptitude. Those years are for finding the right path for specialization later. Also, stay connected to nature seasons, animals. Important not to be totally divorced from the earth. Can be done via healthy activities.
Last school years, 15+. Specialization okay now.
Desirable if the student has a clear bent. If not, keep general education going. Emphasize hard work. Detailed study the old drill had value for mental work. More individual initiative, less class teaching.
Engage with current controversies.
Yes. Political, social, theological issues. Read all sides. Debates aimed at truth. Teacher stays neutral, fosters scientific evaluation of arguments and facts. Rare skill, vital for politics.
Keep encouraging them.
Absolutely. Praise real achievement. Point out errors without blame. Never shame stupidity. Feeling achievement is possible is the key stimulus. Boring knowledge is useless. Eagerly learned knowledge sticks. Show relevance. Show how knowledge can change the world. Teacher as ally, not enemy.
Okay, final section. Schools and universities. Day versus boarding.
It's case by case. Boarding might offer country air, allows experimental methods sometimes, though often only for the rich, can group break kids.
Day school keeps family ties, maybe better for sensitive kids.
Right. Avoids excessive parental focus too. Term times help. Good school beats bad home. Good home beats bad school. If both are good, depends on the child.
Societally, boarding is expensive. The source favors academic education till 18 for most.
Yes, strongly. Vocational training only after a broad academic base.
Universities, seen as becoming job training centers again.
Yeah, historically that was often their role, and it's happening again. Barristers, clergy, doctors, civil servants.
And the source regrets the decline of pure learning.
It does. Learning for its own sake was tied to aristocracy, which had evils. But this loss is still regrettable. Industrialism isn't great for useless knowledge.
But pure learning is still vital.
Absolutely essential.
Yeah.
It needs to connect to the whole community, not just a leisure class. Its role should grow, pushing back against just immediate utility.
University selection based purely on talent and desire.
Yes, not wealth. The waste of talent when poor kids can't afford training, like in medicine, is highlighted. Combat idleness, yes, but don't test just conformity. Lectures are often a pure waste of time. More individual work, judged by quality.
University teachers need to be researchers.
Engaged in research, yes. Have time to know their field globally. Deep knowledge and passion matter more than teaching tricks at this level. Criticizes old-school master habits, moralizing, drilling, nagging. If students aren't working, they should leave.
And great discoveries come from
Passionate vision, wanting to create something, embody an idea, not just immediate usefulness.
So pulling it all together, this is a vision of education as the key tool for a better world, isn't it?
Absolutely. Forming character based on love, curiosity, overcoming fear, cultivating intelligence, sympathy, critical thinking. Knowledge is joy as a tool for transformation.
And it all hinges on that early training being done right.
The impact of the early environment is just huge in this view. The potential for change through skilled, loving methods from birth. It's presented as immense, really quite optimistic.
And it ends with a direct challenge to us, the listeners.
Yeah, basically. The way is clear. Do we love our children enough to take it? Pretty powerful question.
And then that final provocative thought. The alternative.
Right. Will we let kids be twisted and stunted and terrified in youth to be killed afterwards in feudal wars which their intelligence was too cowed to prevent?
Wow, that is intense. Stark choice.
Or can love, using education, conquer those thousand ancient fears, blocking the road to happiness and freedom? Can we give them that great gift of a better life? It really frames education as this fundamental project for all of humanity. Starts with the youngest.